Welcome to Meconomy Originals, original stories of founders, brands, and global business power.
$50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro.
In a world that once believed sanctions and diplomacy would be enough, what happens when control over energy turns into an open struggle for power?
Venezuela right now is a dead country. We have to bring it back, and we're going to have big investments by the oil companies to bring back the infrastructure.
El gobierno estadounidense siempre ha tenido acceso al petróleo venezolano.
Geopolitics rarely announces itself clearly. It does not begin with declarations or headlines. More often, it advances quietly, through decisions taken far from public opinion.
Primero que Venezuela no ha estado ni está aislada.
For years, Venezuela appeared frozen in a familiar story. Sanctions, economic collapse.
Hoy tengo esto, pero mañana no sé cómo voy a poder darle de comer a mis hijos.
Political deadlock. But beneath that surface, forces were shifting.
What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation.
Venezuela was sanctioned, isolated, and yet never fully disconnected from the global system. Sanctions that restricted finance but allowed movement. Diplomacy that condemned publicly but negotiated quietly.
Realmente los Estados Unidos veían en Venezuela un elemento distorsionador de la estabilidad en la región.
To understand what is happening now, we need to understand what has changed.
The country is a mess.
Enforcement became more visible. Naval presence stopped being symbolic. Legal frameworks once applied selectively began operating in real time. And geopolitics, at its core, is not shaped by speeches or resolutions. It is shaped by capability and by willingness. The willingness to enforce sanctions, the capability to control access points, and the readiness to absorb diplomatic fallout.
En Estados Unidos deben entender que el mundo ha crecido, que el siglo XXI es un mundo ya multipolar.
Can economic pressure, backed by operational control, still shape outcomes in a multipolar world? For others watching closely, it raised a different question. Where are the new limits of sovereignty, and who gets to define them? At the center of Venezuela's relevance lies a single, unavoidable fact. Venezuela holds some of the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, and everyone knows it.
Vengo con dolor por el secuestro de dos héroes que tenemos de rehenes en los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica, el presidente Nicolás Maduro y la primera combatiente, primera dama de este país, Cilia Flores.
To understand why Venezuela's present matters so profoundly, we need to turn back the clock, not a few years, but more than a century. Oil was not always central to Venezuela's economy.
Yo no sé si el petróleo para Venezuela fue una bendición o una maldición, de verdad, porque de hace 100 años Venezuela era un país agrícola. Cuando se descubre el petróleo, que fue Estados Unidos a explotar el petróleo, que fueron los que llevaron las maquinarias y todo eso, pues ellos estuvieron explotando petróleo por 100 años en Venezuela. Y hubo diferentes etapas. Hubo la etapa que le llaman la Venezuela Saudí, donde Venezuela era receptor de migrantes. Iban migrantes de toda parte del mundo, y no estoy exagerando, de toda parte del mundo, de Europa, de Latinoamérica, de muchas partes. Era porque había abundancia en cuanto a muchas cosas.
In the 19th century, the country was largely agrarian. Coffee, cacao, and livestock defined its exports. Economic power was regional. The state existed, but its reach was limited. That reality changed in the early 20th century. Commercial oil production began in the 1910s, when the first significant wells were drilled around Lake Maracaibo. What followed was not gradual development, but transformation. Foreign companies arrived quickly, capital followed, infrastructure expanded. By the 1920s and 1930s, Venezuela had become one of the world's largest oil exporters. The speed of that transformation mattered. Unlike countries that industrialized slowly, Venezuela reorganized its entire economy around a single resource in just a few decades. Oil revenues flooded the state. Agriculture declined. Industrial diversification stalled. This was not accidental. Oil allowed governments to fund themselves without taxing citizens. And when states do not depend on taxation, accountability weakens. Political power concentrated. Institutions became secondary. Economic cycles tied themselves almost entirely to global energy prices. In 1976, Venezuela took a defining step: the nationalization of its oil industry and the creation of PDVSA. For years, PDVSA was considered one of the most technically capable oil companies in the world. Its engineers were respected. Its production was stable. Its revenues sustained the state. Oil exports came to represent up to 95% of foreign exchange earnings and a majority of public revenue. The Venezuelan state grew around oil. Social programs expanded. Public employment increased. Economic alternatives shrank. Dependency deepened. Venezuela's proven oil reserves, more than 300 billion barrels, concentrated largely in the Orinoco Belt, gave the illusion of permanence. But reserves are not production. Extracting heavy crude requires capital, technology, maintenance, and long-term planning.
Cuando nosotros vemos los indicadores de la capacidad, calidad y gestión de la industria petrolera, es decadente sin lugar a dudas en los últimos años. Esto obedece a muchas razones, desde quienes la dirigían hasta los accesos que tenían a la recuperación de esa industria, que estructuralmente era americana. ¿Okay? ¿Por qué? Bueno, porque fueron los americanos quienes inicialmente participaron en el desarrollo de la industria petrolera venezolana.
Over time, underinvestment, political interference, and mismanagement eroded capacity. Infrastructure aged. Expertise drained away. The decline of the PDVSA was not a single event, but a slow-motion industrial collapse. To extract the extra heavy crude of the Orinoco Belt, you don't just drill, you need an industrial symphony. You need diluents, light naphtha that thins the sludge so it can flow through pipelines. When domestic production of naphtha failed, Venezuela had to do the unthinkable, import it. The state-owned giant, once a partner of equals with global titans, began trading its future for spare parts. Maintenance schedules that once spanned decades were reduced to emergency repairs. We see the result in the flares of Monagas. Gas that should be captured and sold is instead burned, lighting up the night sky, a visible signal of a system that no longer processes its own wealth. It's a paradox of physics. Having the most oil in the world means nothing if you lack the chemical solvents to move it. Production declined steadily. Oil remained abundant beneath the ground, but the ability to convert it into stable wealth weakened. This imbalance, massive reserves paired with declining operational capacity, created the paradox that defines Venezuela's vulnerability today. Too much oil to be ignored, too little leverage to control its destiny. Oil as promise, oil as frustration.
El año de la bonanza, donde los precios petroleros fueron los máximos históricos, cuando aquí en Europa estamos en una recesión, en 2008, en Venezuela había una bonanza petrolera, entonces tú dirías, bueno, pues debe ser, todo el mundo debe estar viviendo muy bien. Evidentemente esa riqueza no llegaba, por lo que te comentaba antes. No había seguridad jurídica, no había seguridad en las calles, los hospitales inexistentes, la escasez de comida, de alimentos. Entonces, ¿dónde iba ese dinero? Pues yo creo que ya hoy en día no es ningún secreto, pues la corrupción tan galopante que ha habido por parte del gobierno.
Oil shaped the Venezuelan state, but it also trapped it.
Cuando vemos las acciones que ha emprendido el gobierno de los Estados Unidos, tienen un propósito amplio. Mucha gente dice que su interés se basa en el petróleo venezolano exclusivamente. Yo no lo creo realmente, y no lo creo porque el gobierno estadounidense siempre ha tenido acceso al petróleo venezolano indistintamente de las condiciones o relaciones políticas que pueda haber mantenido con los gobiernos de turno.
Sanctions were designed to break this system. Over the past decade, Venezuela became one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world.
But we really haven't done the really tough sanctions yet. We can do the tough sanctions, and all options are open, so we may be doing that. But we haven't done the toughest of sanctions, as you know. We've done, I would say, right down the middle. But we can go a lot tougher if we need to do that. But it's a very sad thing. We're not looking for anything other than taking care of a lot of people that are starving and dying in the streets. What's happening there is a disgrace. This was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And all of a sudden, it's it's greed.
Financial restrictions, asset freezes, trade bans, diplomatic isolation. The economy contracted sharply. Institutions weakened further. Living standards collapsed. Hyperinflation distorted prices. Savings evaporated. Planning became impossible. And yet, something fundamental never stopped.
Pasamos una semana sin electricidad. Esto te lo estoy contando con el corazón abierto. Una semana sin electricidad. Nosotros no teníamos gas y estábamos cocinando con una cocina eléctrica porque allá se acostumbra mayormente que las cocinas todas son a gas. Y nosotros en ese momento, como no teníamos gas, teníamos una cocina eléctrica. Se ha ido la luz por una semana, la electricidad, y nos tocó cocinar a leña por esa semana. Y leña, pues buscar de donde pudieras conseguir leña. El último día que llegó la luz ya iba en camino a desarmar la cama de mi hija para convertirla en leña, porque no teníamos para cocinar.
The oil kept moving. Despite sanctions, Venezuelan crude continued to reach international markets, not openly, not easily, but persistently, through indirect routes, through steep discounts, through complex layers of intermediaries. Production fell dramatically, but strategic output remained. Asia emerged as a primary destination. Payments became opaque. Logistics grew creative.
Los gobiernos, vamos a llamarlos chavistas, para marcar una época antes y después, los gobiernos chavistas tuvieron una enorme oposición hacia las relaciones con los Estados Unidos y los Estados Unidos hacia los gobiernos chavistas por razones ideológicas. Eso le permitió a otros actores emergentes como China, Rusia, Irán, Cuba, tener acceso a esa política económica, a esos productos, a esa generación de petróleo que surgía desde Venezuela, que si bien no estaba en su mejor momento, para ellos representaba una oportunidad interesante, ya que nunca habían tenido un acceso como el que estaban teniendo en ese momento. Los chinos, por su lado, pactaron una serie de acuerdos y negociaciones con los gobiernos, principalmente con el gobierno de Chávez. Se crea en ese momento lo que llamaron el convenio China-Venezuela, crearon lo que llamaron el Fondo Chino, que era un fondo de inversiones que los chinos otorgaban, o el gobierno de China otorgaba al gobierno de Venezuela para que dispusiera de tecnologías y recursos y productos chinos. Lamentablemente eso no tuvo un alcance beneficioso para el país. Ves muchísimas obras inconclusas, ves muchísimos proyectos que no se llegaron a concretar, ves una evaporización de los recursos que hoy existe la deuda, pero no se ve la contrapartida de esa deuda, porque en un principio las deudas deben tener como propósito el desarrollo y sostenibilidad de los programas de desarrollo del país, que no lo ves por ningún lado.
China approached Venezuela pragmatically. Its interest was not ideological but structural, securing energy supply beyond Western-controlled systems. Russia offered political backing, symbolic, visible, and strategically useful. The United States designed the sanctions architecture.
Ciertas sanciones se pusieron, pero no fue al país como tal. Las sanciones fueron a personas. Y esta sanción a personas eran los que tenían los lazos para hacer la importación de comida y todo, que al final era pura porquería. Porque ponían los precios altísimos, como que si estuviésemos hablando de comida de primera calidad, cuando eran alimentos que estaban incluso ya en estado de descomposición, todo eso, lo que ya todo el mundo sabe. Pero entonces ahí fue donde cayó Alex Saab en la primera administración de Donald Trump, y agarraron a los sobrinos de Cilia Flores también y empezaron a actuar. Sanciones más encarcelamiento, porque ya hay investigaciones.
Tightening pressure without fully sealing the system. The punishment existed, but it did not achieve its central objective. Power did not change hands. Instead, the system adapted. Access mattered more than productivity. Sanctions don't just create scarcity, they create a new class of elite. The bolichicos.
Por ejemplo, tú veías que todos inmediatamente se hacían de jerarquías. En el caso de los militares, comandante general, supremo, máximo líder. Yo siempre pongo de ejemplo a Gaddafi, ¿no? Que gobernó más de 40 años y era coronel. Cuando se hizo del poder, era coronel. Cuando lo derrocaron del poder, seguía siendo coronel.
When a state is disconnected from the global banking system, it can no longer conduct simple wire transfers. It needs a bridge. This is where the money changers and intermediaries enter. Small brokerage firms in Miami, Panama, and Istanbul suddenly became the lungs of the Venezuelan economy. They operate through swap markets. You give them bolivares in Caracas, they give you dollars in a private account in Switzerland. The commission? Often upward of 20 or 30%. This is the hidden tax of the grey zone. While the population saw their savings vanish through hyperinflation, a small circle of well-connected individuals build fortunes by managing the friction of the sanctions themselves. They are the architects of the informal recovery, a system where the state survives not because it is productive, but because it is clever at moving money through the cracks of the Western Wall. Here is where connections mattered more than markets. For ordinary Venezuelans, this adaptation came at a severe cost. Inflation, shortages, everyday decisions. Oil, often described as a blessing, became a distortion. Revenues did not translate into stability. They reinforced a system where proximity to power determined survival. Sanctions did not end the system. They made it more complex, more fragile. The conflict was not resolved. It was contained, waiting for a breaking point.
Over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela.
Financial pressure has limits. When banks, contracts, and currency controls fail to produce change, power moves elsewhere. It shifts from paperwork to logistics, from regulation to movement. In Venezuela, that shift became visible. Sanctions expanded beyond finance into the physical world of trade. Insurance policies were withdrawn. Shipping registries came under scrutiny. Ports and sea lines became control points. Tankers were tracked. Cargoes delayed. Coverage denied. Oil did not disappear, but it became harder to move.
Ya hay una intervención, ya hay una situación que está presente, y yo creo que esto hay que verlo como una oportunidad para que las cosas mejoren. Que no queríamos que fuese así, porque debió haber sido de una manera pacífica, sí, muchos pensamos de esa forma, pero como se cerraron las puertas para esa vía pacífica y tuvo que ser así, pues yo creo que esto sería una oportunidad. Y cuando digo no es que tiene que eliminarse a la otra parte, porque no es así, porque todos somos venezolanos, pero sí esa parte tiene que ceder espacio y ceder en su capricho de creerse que ellos son los únicos que estaban capacitados para gobernar el país, porque ellos lo decían.
More expensive, more risky. Risk premiums rose. Freight costs increased. Markets adjusted. China protested diplomatically as shipments stalled. Russia accused Washington of weaponizing international trade. Maritime law became contested ground. To survive, the system adapted again. Ships without clear flags, transfers at sea, triangulated routes. This is where the grey zone becomes a dark market. Imagine a 300-meter-long Suezmax tanker carrying 2 million barrels of crude, suddenly vanishing from global tracking screens. This is the going dark maneuver. As these ships enter the South China Sea, they disable their AIS, the Automatic Identification System. They become ghost ships. In the middle of the ocean, far from the eyes of the OFAC, they pull alongside another tanker. This is a ship-to-ship STS transfer. Dangerous, unregulated, and highly profitable. The Venezuelan oil is pumped into a clean ship. On paper, that oil is no longer Venezuelan. It is rebranded as Malaysian blend or Middle Eastern bitumen. The paper trail is scrubbed through a labyrinth of shell companies in jurisdictions like the Marshall Islands or the Seychelles. By the time the crude reaches a refinery in Shandong, the geopolitical risk has been laundered into a simple commodity transaction. But this camouflage has a price: the sanction discount. Venezuela is forced to sell its only asset at 30 or 40% below market price, just to pay for the cost of the shadows.
El gobierno debe de alguna manera tener políticas que garanticen ese equilibrio económico, que le dé accesibilidad a las personas, que valore el salario con respecto al propósito que debe tener el salario. Una de las cosas que han afectado muchísimo al país económicamente hablando es la pérdida del valor del trabajo. Es decir, cuando yo establezco que mi jornada me va a generar un salario que no es compensatorio de lo más elemental, pierde sentido trabajar. Entonces gana propósito otras actividades que van desde mendigar hasta hacer trabajos viles, no lo sé, pero eso es parte de lo que deben recuperar. Y yo creo que a través de esta reactivación de la producción petrolera, eso es una de las cosas fundamentales que se va a recuperar. ¿Por qué? Porque si bien es cierto que estos proyectos de recuperación tienen una inmensa demanda de tecnologías, de equipos, de elementos que van a ser traídos principalmente desde los Estados Unidos, igual que muchísimos de los directores y gerentes de estas reactivaciones o de estas corporaciones o empresas, tampoco es menos cierto que va a haber muchísima actividad, mano de obra, técnicos medios, ingenieros, que van a estar establecidos en el país y que van a ser de alguna manera beneficiarios de esa reactivación. Y a su vez eso es el desencadenante del resto de la reactivación.
Each adaptation increased opacity. Each opacity increased vulnerability. But the strategy for survival isn't limited to liquid gold. Deep in the Amazonian jungle lies the Arco Minero: gold, coltan, and thorium. Unlike a tanker full of oil, gold is untraceable once melted. It is the ultimate sanction buster. Reports suggest that tons of Venezuelan gold were flown to Turkey and the UAE, exchanged directly for food and basic goods. This is barter on a national scale. It's a medieval solution for a 21st century problem. When your central bank is barred from the London bullion market, your gold becomes a black market commodity. It is sold at a discount, moved in private jets, and laundered through third-party refineries until it enters the global supply chain as clean bullion. The environmental cost is catastrophic. The geopolitical cost is the total erosion of transparency. What had once been an economic flow became a visible geopolitical battlefield. How control actually works when it reaches logistics. The more the system adapted, the more exposed it became. Control was no longer abstract, it was physical.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually.
Eventually, ambiguity runs out. Systems designed to contain tension are built on limits. Limits of patience, limits of credibility, limits of enforcement. When those limits are reached, containment gives way to confrontation.
Y el gobierno de Estados Unidos lo sabe porque se le hemos dicho a muchos de sus voceros que si quieren conversar seriamente de un acuerdo de combate contra el narcotráfico, estamos listos. Que si quieren petróleo de Venezuela, está lista Venezuela para inversión estadounidense como con Chevron, cuando quieran, donde quieran y como quieran.
In Venezuela, that moment arrived gradually, and then all at once. Diplomatic warnings hardened, public statements grew sharper. Military movements became more visible, less symbolic. What had once been framed as deterrence began to look like preparation. Ultimatums replaced negotiation. Deadlines replaced dialogue. Control shifted from conditioning behavior to acting upon it. The story now returns to the night when everything appeared to change, but with context.
Y actualmente decir que una persona va a llegar a gobernar en paz va a ser muy difícil, independientemente del bando que sea. Primero, del bando de los que están, bueno, ellos siguen gobernando, a pesar de lo que pasó, ellos siguen gobernando porque Delcy Rodríguez es del partido de ellos, es del movimiento de ellos. Que va a gobernar otra persona que sea opositora a ellos, bueno, no la va a tener fácil porque hay un grupo de personas que todavía siguen apoyando al gobierno, pero es que aparte del grupo de personas, yo no lo diría tanto por grupo de personas, lo diría más bien por grupos de colectivos que está comprobado que son personas armadas que están en los barrios, son personas civiles que han recibido armas por parte del gobierno para defender la revolución.
By the time helicopters crossed the city skyline, the outcome was no longer uncertain. It had been shaped by months of escalation, pressure, and calculated restraint. This was not improvisation, it was culmination. Across media and governments, competing narratives emerged immediately. Some described the operation as a lawful arrest. Others called it an illegitimate intervention. Others framed it as an extraction, justified by national security. Each version defended by different political interests, legal interpretations, and strategic priorities. But beneath the disagreement, there was one shared recognition. A line had been crossed. For years, Venezuela had survived by existing between categories, sanctioned but connected, isolated but operational. That space collapsed in a single night.
La estabilidad pasa por la reconciliación. Se supone que la desgracia del gobierno chavista es generada por dos elementos fundamentales. Uno, por el desastre económico y dos, por la represión brutal. Claro, la represión brutal es una consecuencia del desastre económico. ¿Okay? Al no poder satisfacer las necesidades elementales del país, bueno, tengo que reprimirlos para que el país no arda. ¿Okay? Mucha gente se pregunta que por qué miembros del mismo gobierno que supuestamente están sacando se mantienen en el gobierno. Lo que pasa es que lo primero que tú tienes que evitar es que haya una escalada de violencia dentro del país. ¿Okay? Mucha gente no se siente satisfecha. ¿Por qué? Bueno, porque yo quiero justicia o venganza, pero yo exijo en este momento que todos estos criminales paguen. Muy bien, perfecto. Esa es la justicia del romántico. Ese es el héroe de guerra. Yo cada vez que veo a la gente hablando del heroísmo de la guerra, de lo valiente, yo digo, coño, mira qué dicha la de estos bufones que nunca han tenido que ver de cerca lo que es un conflicto armado, ¿no? Ni nunca han tenido que sufrir las consecuencias de estar en medio de un conflicto armado. ¿Qué ocurre hoy? ¿Quién es mejor, María Corina o Delcy? No lo sé. ¿Por qué? Bueno, yo no tengo esa capacidad de hacer juicios de valores. Lo que yo sí te puedo decir es que Delcy, con todo lo que pueda tener en contra de ella, es la que garantiza continuidad dentro de la sociedad.
Reaction to the moment it became real, not theoretical. What mattered was not only what happened, but what it signaled. For the first time in decades, economic pressure backed by operational force had been used openly against a sitting head of state in the Western Hemisphere. This was no longer about persuasion. It was about demonstration. A demonstration that enforcement could move beyond contracts and accounts into territory, infrastructure, and leadership itself. This was not a tactical error. It was not an accident of escalation. It was a deliberate decision. A decision to test whether power, exercised visibly and unapologetically, could still impose outcomes in a multipolar world. The rules had changed, and once changed, they could not be quietly restored.
It seems like a miracle to be sitting here in a free country in front of people that have also given their lives to fight for freedom and justice and democracy. And that's why I am very honored, not only with the Heritage Foundation, but with every single citizen of this country that has welcomed us and has honored the immense struggle that the Venezuelan people has fought for so long. And finally, we can say that we are, yes, the threshold of freedom.
The real border of Venezuela isn't the jungle or the sea. It's the digital architecture of the US dollar. When Washington applies secondary sanctions, it isn't just telling American companies not to trade. It is telling every bank in the world, choose. You can do business with a sanctioned regime, or you can have access to the US financial system, but not both. For a global bank in Singapore or Frankfurt, the choice is non-existent. This is the era of overcompliance. Fearful of billion-dollar fines, financial institutions begin to block even legal transactions, food, medicine, private savings. The compliance department becomes more powerful than the diplomatic corps. Sovereignty is no longer a flag. It is a line of code in a banking ledger. If your central bank's accounts are frozen in London or New York, your gold bars in a vault are merely heavy stones. You have the asset, but you have lost the utility. Some corridors became politically secure, others became contested. Compliance turned into advantage. Sovereignty, once treated as absolute, revealed itself as conditional. In the face of a frozen dollar, the regime turned to the digital frontier. The Petro was announced as the world's first sovereign cryptocurrency. While it largely failed as a usable currency, it served a deeper purpose, a laboratory for bypassing the SWIFT system. Today, Venezuela is one of the world's leaders in crypto adoption, but not by choice. It's a necessity, from the government using Tether to pay for imports, to citizens using Bitcoin to protect their remaining wealth from the Bolivar's collapse. Crypto became the digital bunker. It created a parallel financial reality that the US Treasury struggled to map. But every digital solution has a physical footprint. The servers need power, the miners need cooling, and the internet needs to stay on in a country where the power grid is a ghost of its former self. Conditional on access, conditional on alignment, conditional on enforceability. How this changes future calculations for states. The story now lifts beyond Venezuela. What happened there was not an anomaly. It was a precedent.
Para mí es una cosa estructural, no es una cosa de un año ni de 2 años, es una cosa estructural. Puede haber una recuperación económica muy pronta porque ya eso sí es un tema más material, más físico. De hecho ya están saliendo buques de petróleo cargados hacia Estados Unidos y ya la recuperación económica sí se puede dar un poco más. Ahora, pero la recuperación estructural de sociedad, eso va a llevar más tiempo. Cambiar lo que te dije hace rato, cambiar la mentalidad de las personas va a llevar tiempo, porque hubo un lavado de cerebro muy grande en Venezuela a principios de todo esto y cambiar la mentalidad va a costar.
A demonstration of how power can now be exercised in an interconnected world, not by owning resources alone, but by controlling the systems that move them. Energy, shipping, finance, insurance, logistics. These are no longer neutral infrastructures. They are instruments.
Las acciones emprendidas por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos no son resultado de una improvisación, no son resultado de que Donald Trump se despertó hoy molesto con algo y dijo vamos a atacar. No, eso es producto de todo un estudio, de trabajo de inteligencia, de infiltraciones, de análisis, de evaluaciones situacionales respecto a los distintos escenarios, qué pasa si muevo esta ficha, qué pasa si coloco esta otra, y llegaron a la conclusión de que el mejor proceso de transición era a través de los mismos responsables del caos. ¿Por qué? Bueno, porque el caos en sí tiene orden. Hoy se habla de la presencia de los colectivos en la calle, pero indistintamente de que yo no esté de acuerdo con nada de ese tipo de actividades, los que hoy están en el gobierno por lo menos tienen medio de comunicación con ellos. Si tú sacas a esto e impones a otro, estos que impongas tienen que tener la capacidad real de neutralizar a esos elementos que distorsionan la tranquilidad de la sociedad y que van a interrumpir la actividad cotidiana.
Reflection on what this means for the future. The final image returns to the ocean. Ships move across open water, but their paths are no longer invisible. They pass through checkpoints, surveillance zones, and regulatory filters. Movement is permitted, not assumed. Venezuela was not the final objective. It was the signal. A signal that in the 21st century, power no longer lies only in what you possess, oil, territory, reserves, but in what you allow to move and under which conditions. In a world governed by flows, control is no longer abstract, it is operational. And once demonstrated, it cannot be unseen.